This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The latest in the war against coronavirus as confirmed cases rise above 1.6 million. The African Union throws its support behind the WHO amid criticism from the United States. And in the US, debate rages over drugs touted by President Trump to fight COVID-19. This is Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. I am Penina Karibe. Let's have a look at the business headlines with Ramah.
Yes, indeed, Penina. Here's what's coming up in business. Nigeria trims its budget by 3%, even though oil prices have fallen by over 50%. And we'll examine how South Africans are adapting to working remotely amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. The details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Penina.
Thank you, Ramah. Let's begin with the latest numbers in the coronavirus pandemic. The global total of confirmed cases has surpassed 1.6 million. Over 97,000 people have died. The United States has reported more than 16,000 deaths. Cases there have surged past 460,000, more than a quarter of the global total. Nearly half of all cases are in Europe, with Spain and Italy the hardest hit. Iran has registered more than 68,000 infections. The US is one of the worst hit countries. There are more than 460,000 confirmed cases and over 16,000 deaths in the country. Over the past few days, President Donald Trump has been touting the use of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin or Z-Pak as a cure for COVID-19. Trump was influenced by a widely publicized study in France. It showed that more than half of 40 patients given the medicine experienced clearing of their airways within 3 to 6 days. The French Health Ministry has warned against the use of the medicine. Now, there are over 12,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus across Africa. The continent has announced 640 deaths and over 1,600 recoveries. Of Africa's 54 countries, Comoros and Lesotho are the only two yet to report a case of the virus. Libya has announced its first death from the virus. The country has 24 cases. South Africa, Egypt and Algeria are the worst hit on the continent. Experts say the numbers are likely to grow. South Africa has extended its lockdown for another 2 weeks with hope to stem the spread of the virus. Washing your hands regularly has been recommended as the first defense against COVID-19, but running water is not readily available in some countries. Nations like Ghana have begun supplying free water to its citizens. All right, so here's a look at the COVID-19 numbers by region. In Northern Africa, Egypt has the highest number of reported cases at 1,699 with 118 deaths. Algeria follows closely with 1,666 infections. In West Africa, all 16 affected countries are below the 500 mark. Elsewhere in Central Africa, Cameroon has the highest confirmed cases. It has nearly 4 times the number of infections as the second highest country, which is the DRC. In Eastern Africa, Kenya has recorded more than 180 cases. And lastly, South Africa leads the southern part of the continent with nearly 2,000 cases. Meanwhile, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has raised concerns over the rising number of coronavirus cases on the continent.
I'd like to put these numbers in context. When last week we briefed with you all, our numbers were still around 7,000. So between last week and now, we have increased by almost 4,500 cases or infected individuals. That is a rapid increase in our numbers, and we continue to be very concerned with the direction and trajectory that this virus is heading in Africa.
The African Union has called for a stop to the diversionary issues that may interfere with the focus on fighting the existential threat of the coronavirus. The Continental Organization said the statement by the U.S. government to cut funds from WHO at this critical moment when its support is needed more than any other time is dismaying. Here's CGTN's Grumchala with more.
The U.S. is still with the opinion that the World Health Organization is weak, has delivered less, and has allegiance with China, a claim many disagree with. After the continued threat of President Donald Trump to cut financial support for WHO, the AU again said this is disappointing and must be rethought.
The statement given by the United States President, who we have a lot of respect for, we are dismayed that they want to use this to cut funding to WHO at a time when the WHO needed utmost support. So for us as Africans, we support Dr. Tedros totally. We recognize his work. He's been thrown in at the deep end, but he's performing credibly as far as we're concerned. And everybody, every peace-loving, every objective person who operates without prejudice appreciates this.
The Director General of the World Health Body, Tedros Adhanom, is also under heavy scrutiny. Political analysts say Trump is using this whole situation as a cover-up for his weak delivery in fighting COVID-19 in his country.
Obviously, Trump is doing what he always does, creating controversy to divert public scrutiny on his actions. This time, scrutiny from his weak response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is sad the President of the United States, who was supposed to lead humanity's fight against COVID-19, is engaged in such irresponsible politics. And this is why African leaders are rallying behind Dr. Tedros and criticizing President Trump.
The African Union now wants a refocus on what it calls the existential threat for humanity and especially for the continent of Africa.
This is an existential problem. The very future of the continent will depend on how this matter is handled.
In a nutshell, everyone, African and other leaders from across the world, now want to avoid any sort of destruction or any reason to slow them down from effectively combating the coronavirus. The hope is the leaders of the world's largest economy will be of the same thought. Grumjara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa has extended the national lockdown until the end of April to curb the spread of the COVID-19. Ramaphosa says more testing needs to be done to get a full picture of the prevalence rate. CGTN's Yulisa Njamela now looks at the timeline of events in South Africa's war on coronavirus.
The first case of the coronavirus here in South Africa was announced on the 5th of March. A month later, the cases had increased exponentially. At this point, a number of deaths had also been reported.
My fellow South Africans,
10 days later, President Cyril Ramaphosa declared a national state of disaster. The authorities closed borders and seaports. They also limited public gatherings. The government also put in place several measures in the health sector to curb the spread of the virus. President Cyril Ramaphosa then announced that a lockdown would begin on the 26th of March and continue for 21 days. As the situation worsened, businesses responded by introducing measures to stop the spread of the virus. Major churches and their leaders also came on board. They cancelled services and the annual Easter gatherings. The taxi industry also started introducing hygiene programs at taxi ranks. Some 16 million South Africans use taxis to move around on a daily basis. The private sector also came in, pledging billions of rand to help curb the spread of this virus. But panic soon set in as many South Africans rushed to stock up on supplies. The government immediately stepped in and implemented price controls on essential items. It promised that those who are increasing prices will be punished.
We've looked at domestic sources of slowdown in the economy. Treasury will monitor all of this, and as and when any interventions are necessary, we'll obviously agree on the form of those.
Relief measures were announced to help small businesses and to also keep the economy afloat. Several other measures were also announced for different sectors.
Has decided to enforce a nationwide lockdown for 21 days.
The lockdown came with stringent rules. People were asked to stay at home and always maintain a safe distance. The country effectively shut down. Only essential services were allowed. On the eve of the lockdown, the president ordered the South African Defence Force and the police to enforce the regulations. In some parts, citizens heeded the call and stayed at home. Some of the lockdown measures included a ban on the sale of alcohol. This, according to the police ministry, helped reduce crime substantially.
To show that you are serious, it tells us that if you break these laws or these regulations, we are 6 months in or fined or both. In KZN, 2 people have been charged already, charged with attempted murder, who deliberately moved around after they've been told that they don't have to move around. So it's not a fairy tale to say the law will act and act very harsh on you.
Minister Cele also announced a number of arrests of those breaking the lockdown rules. Those included a bride and a groom and their guests in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. In the second week of the lockdown, the government announced mass testing. Some South Africans complained that the lockdown had adversely affected them.
I can't do anything. I can't even see my children. I can't travel. It hurts. It's too long and it's affecting us badly.
When many people hear that the coronavirus kills, they don't seem to believe it. They think it's far from them because they haven't seen anyone around them affected.
The worst affected area here in South Africa is the Gauteng province, South Africa's economic hub. And as the cases increase, government is now contemplating whether to extend the lockdown period. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's revisit the United States, which now has more than a quarter of the world's confirmed coronavirus cases. For more on this, our reporter Nick Harper is joining us live now from Washington, D.C. Nick, what's the latest on America's battle with coronavirus?
Well, we've seen another substantial increase in cases and deaths over the last 24 hours. During that time, the United States has now become the country with the second highest number of deaths. It's recently surpassed Spain. It's just below Italy, and the way that the numbers are going, it looks as if it may overtake Italy in the next 24 to 48 hours. So just to run down the latest figures, the US has now reached, in terms of the death toll, 17,800 deaths, and for cases, it's 473,000 confirmed cases. Also, warnings that the United States might not be able to open anytime soon. Effectively, all of the businesses and restaurants at the moment remain shut. The US government at one point was suggesting that they may be able to open them up by Easter. That was President Trump's hope, but obviously we're now at Easter weekend and those businesses remain closed. The US Surgeon General Jerome Adams is warning that even May the 1st will be too early to reopen many businesses across the US.
And Nick, the confusion over Trump's continued touting of hydroxychloroquine and Z-Pak for treatment of COVID-19 has refused to end. What are the US doctors in the front line saying about these drugs? And are we anywhere close to an official government position on this?
Well, essentially, the official government position at the moment is President Trump's, and he is pushing this. He's saying that it's something that should be used. However, there are still no tests that have proved its effectiveness. Over the last few days, we've seen some of the major US institutions changing or putting out revised guidance. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has revised their guidance. They're making it clear that there currently is no approved drugs, including these ones that the president is is pushing, and it also is saying that they are under investigation in clinical trials. But those clinical trials have only started over the last day or so. The National Institute for Health have finally started trials on people to see whether they prove effective in battling COVID-19. Those trials starting in Tennessee, and we're not expecting to see any results as to how effective those drugs actually are for several more weeks to come.
And finally, Nick, we know New York is conducting mass burials. Experts are predicting a peak soon. Is the state getting a handle on shortages of medical supplies and equipment?
Yes, those mass burials taking place on an island just outside of Manhattan, a place that's been used for 150 years, a place where people who haven't claimed their bodies or families who can't pay for burials, that's where people end up being buried in mass graves. More than 1 million people are buried there, but obviously now, controversially, it's being used as a site to bury people who've died as a result of COVID-19. That shortage, though, of essential supplies does continue. Andrew Cuomo, the governor of the state of New York, has warned that they are still running short of supplies. Ventilators is the big issue. They've been asking for them. Even China has donated about 1,000. But they've now tried to band together with other governors. Andrew Cuomo really creating a consortium with other governors across the United States to try and increase their bidding power to be able to get their hands on these supplies more quickly. But he is continuing to warn that they still don't have enough supplies for all of those frontline doctors and nurses to be able to adequately battle the effects of COVID-19.
All right, Nick, we appreciate that update. Thank you very much. Nick Harper live for us in Washington. And this is Africa Live. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Just as the world was waiting for the declaration of the Democratic Republic of Congo as Ebola-free, a new case of Ebola has been registered there. Before this news, it had been more than a month since the last Ebola patient was discharged after full recovery. Let's get the details now from our reporter Chris Ochamringa live for us in Kinshasa. So Chris, a setback for the DRC. Tell us more about this new case.
Well, the Ministry of Health in the DRC just confirmed that they found a patient in North Kivu province, Beni territory to be specific, who tested positive for Ebola. This was a 26-year-old man in this war-racked region. It's a very big disappointment to the Congolese people and also the international aid workers who have been supporting the government to deal with this outbreak, because now they have to go back to square one. They have to find the people he's come into contact with, and then also, treat him and wait for another 42 days. So it's a very big disappointment to the authorities here upon learning of this. The World Health Organization had recorded 52 days without any new Ebola case in the eastern part of the DRC, and it came just 2 days before they were set to declare this outbreak over. And so the World Health Director General has called for an emergency meeting, and has also sent his staff in the DRC to that area to assess the situation so that they come up with solutions to deal with this new case.
And Chris, health authorities there have had a lot of experience after handling the outbreak since last year. Have they established treatment regimes that could help with this case?
Well, the DRC government has certainly gained the expertise. This is the 10th Ebola outbreak, and so this time round, they have already got 2 drugs that are proved very effective in dealing with Ebola. And they also have vaccines, and with all the support of the international community, they have all the tools they need to deal with Ebola in the DRC. The big challenge that they're facing is that this outbreak is happening in an active conflict zone. There's lots of militia groups in that part of the DRC who have been killing people. Authorities have recorded 300 attacks on health facilities, 11 deaths of health workers, and very many civilians who have died. The attacks have been going on in Beni territory, and so it is very devastating news to hear that they have to start this process all over again. They have to wait to treat this patient and then have to wait for another 42 days. And this has come amid the COVID-19 outbreak in the DRC. There are more than 200 cases that have been recorded and 20 deaths in the DRC. And so there's a huge challenge in terms of financing the COVID-19 and Ebola and measles and all these other epidemics that are happening in the DRC. And so the authorities here have holding emergency meetings to see how they can go about this situation that is a big setback, like you mentioned.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for that. Chris Ochamringa live in Kinshasa. As the world battles the coronavirus, reports of stigmatization and attacks targeting people wrongly believed to have been infected or exposed to the virus have raised concerns. Uganda has witnessed an increase in violence against people who have completed their mandatory quarantine. The country has so far confirmed 53 cases of COVID-19 with no reported deaths. CGTN's Michael Baleke has that report.
A physiotherapy session at a hospital compound. Moses Chiimba suffered a back injury. He was attacked at his home after completing 14 days of quarantine. Moses had recently arrived from Dubai but tested negative of COVID-19.
My village chairman turned up at my house with a mob carrying sticks. I was beaten. I was f***ed. My wife called the Ministry of Health, but they delayed to come to my rescue. The police could not save me. They too thought I had the virus. I fell to the ground and collapsed after a heavy blow to my back.
Some members of parliament were recently thrown out of the House after their colleagues accused them of spreading the disease. The legislators had completed mandatory quarantine and been cleared by the Health Ministry after they returned from a trip abroad. Police say they have registered a number of similar cases.
Some are saying even if they go back to the families, you find the children, the wife, the husband doesn't want to come close, and so on. That is very, very dangerous because they don't have the virus, they cannot infect you.
For fear of attacks, victims like Moses are finding it difficult to move freely and settle back in their communities. Viral diseases were in the past associated with places or regions where the first outbreaks occurred. For example, the Zika virus, named after this forest in Uganda. But the UN World Health Organization guidelines stop this practice to reduce stigma, which doctors say harms the mental and physical health of people affected by the disease. The Ministry of Health insists all those who have completed their mandatory quarantine are allowed back in the community after they have tested negative for COVID-19.
Whether we want it or not, government cannot be able to continue holding them because at the end of the day, the government works with professional information and advice from World Health Organizations. I want to call upon the public, call upon the family members, please receive our loved ones, receive our dear ones. And please, I also want to call upon the public. Let's not be the ones to begin judging people whether they are sick or not sick without getting proper advice and guidance from Minister of Health.
However, for Moses, the wounds on his body are healing fast. But his doctors say it will take a while to fix his backbone, and the trauma will take months or perhaps years to heal. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has released an indoor exercise video of himself showing Ugandans how to work out in small spaces. This follows a ban on outdoor exercise after groups of people were seen jogging on roads despite a coronavirus lockdown. Isabel Nakiria reports.
President Museveni says he's managed to keep fit through doing physical exercises indoors.
It's good to go outdoors when there's no problem. But when there's need, you can go indoors.
Mr. Museveni is seen in a video doing push-ups and also jogging in what appears to be an office space. The Ugandan leader says to stay healthy, short exercises within the house or compound is just enough. The security forces have been asked to ensure this order is not broken.
No more
of these exercises on the roads. Do it on your compounds, and it's done for our good. Do it on your compounds. All of us have a compound where we stay. Once you are told to stay inside, that includes your compound. Kindly use the compound and use your rooms for doing that exercise. And let's leave the roads free so that we break this chain.
President Museveni criticized Ugandans for breaking the coronavirus lockdown by gathering out in groups along the roads to jog. Last year, the country launched a physical exercises day, and Ugandans were encouraged to practice healthy lifestyles by regular workouts. Mr. Museveni says the country is dealing with a pandemic, and going out in groups makes it easier for the virus to spread. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
During a briefing before the Health Commission at the Tunisian Parliament, Tunisian health authorities asserted that many lessons could be learned from China as Wuhan returns to normal. CGTN's Adnet Shawashi reports.
A Tunisian scientific commission, led by the National Observatory on New and Emerging Diseases, is working closely with Chinese scientists from the city of Wuhan to fight COVID-19.
China has full control over the situation and enough scientific expertise. That's why Wuhan is returning to normal. The World Health Organization says lifting the lockdown is only possible when the situation improves. It's clear that Wuhan is in the right direction.
The minister added that Tunisia will purchase medical equipment from Chinese suppliers who can guarantee the latest technology as well as safety.
We're already learning from the positive results in China. Now we hope that Chinese authorities will facilitate the acquisition of equipment to treat our patients and share technology and good management. This is the way out of the crisis.
Tunisian MPs and members of the Healthcare Commission at the Tunisian Parliament noted that Chinese authorities have followed an efficient sanitary strategy in Wuhan and other cities.
China's management of the COVID-19 crisis is exemplary. The whole protocol in Wuhan was efficient. China is sharing data with the world in order to find a cure. The virus threatens humanity. Together, we can fight to stop the pandemic.
A Tunisian military aircraft has landed in Tunis Carthage Airport after a 24-hour trip to China to bring back medical equipment like ventilators, rapid tests, and protective tools. Tunisian health authorities insist on the importance of international collaboration in the fields of epidemiology, virology, and biomedical science and other specialties in order to overcome the coronavirus crisis. Experts have welcomed China's open sharing of data and results. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Kenya's judiciary has instructed workers to stay away from court stations in efforts to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Instead, they will use an online system that utilizes digital tools such as video conferencing. CGTN's Wulkis Tanyabwa brings us that report.
Under normal circumstances, Kenya's Supreme Court would be buzzing with activity as hundreds crisscross these corridors in search of justice. But not today. As Kenya grapples with COVID-19, Kenya's judiciary has decided to take its operations online. It is a new direction for Kenya's judiciary. After Kenya reported its initial cases of COVID-19, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary directed members of staff to work from home in a bid to combat the spread of the virus. All work-related matters must now be processed virtually. Urgent matters can still be filed, but only through electronic means. These matters are now forwarded through email to judges and magistrates for uploading on the judiciary's website. Litigants are required to indicate their mobile telephone numbers and email addresses through which they will receive directions. Already a section of magistrates have presided over sessions and delivered orders through video conferencing platforms. These measures prevent the parties from coming into contact with each other as they usually would. For some, it is a welcome shift towards incorporating technology in the judiciary's workings.
I think it's a good thing because it helps curb the spread of the coronavirus. The government has urged members of the public to maintain a certain distance. and this is hard to do in court. This way, everyone will be safe at home.
1 meter apart.
Others, however, feel the move has left a gap in the quest for justice.
Now we've been told you can come and lodge your claim through the digital platform. It's a welcome initiative, but is it working?
Nelson Harvey is the president of the Law Society of Kenya, representing the country's thousands of lawyers. Largely through them, every year about 400,000 cases are filed in court. The move online, he believes, is contributing to an existing backlog of cases.
What about cases that have arisen as a result of this pandemic? The justice system is very spontaneous. It's almost subsistent. Problems and disputes arise every day.
But for the technologically challenged, going online presents a new set of challenges.
It's a good idea but difficult to implement, especially among the elderly who might not be internet savvy. They will suffer. A court should be in a physical location where the litigants can state their case openly.
They suggest that the courts be reopened with adequate protection for judicial officers.
Courts must open. Judges must come and sit here. Let a judge or magistrate sit in chamber. Let the judge or magistrate be serviced by one clerk and one secretary and a maximum of 3 clerks at the registry. You see the fountain of justice. Water must continue flowing on the fountain of justice. The fish there, it must always be underwater. And it hasn't stopped. Why are we stopping it?
But for the time being, the judicial proceedings remain online. And litigants acknowledge that except in the most urgent matters, many will have to wait longer for their day in court. Wilkis Anyabo, CGTN.
Time now for the day's business news with Ramah.
Thank you very much, Penina. Here's what's coming up in business. Nigeria cut its budget by 3%, even as the oil price has fallen by over 50%. And we'll examine how South Africans are adapting to working remotely amidst this pandemic.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Now, despite oil prices having fallen by over 60% so far in the year, Nigeria's government has revised its budget outlay for 2020 by just 3.3%. Africa's largest economy is cutting its expenditure for this year from $27.5 billion to around $26.6 billion. From Abuja, here's CGTN's Phil Ihaza.
The development comes a week after lawmakers and the economic team led by the Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed agreed to review the nation's 2020 budget. Nigeria depends on oil revenues, which dropped following the recent global oil crisis. The situation worsened last month after prices fell to below $30 per barrel. Measures to curb the COVID-19 pandemic have led to a slump in economic activities. This is after the shutdown of many businesses, government offices, ports and production plants during the lockdown. The new budget proposal was cut by over $830 million, with capital expenditure taking the biggest hit. Revenue projection for the year was also reduced from about $21 billion to $13 billion. Experts warn this review could hamper the government's plans to improve infrastructure and pay salaries.
What it means exactly is that some of the projects, at least because revenue has reduced meaningfully by up to about 40%, most of the expenditure that Nigeria would spend on capital will significantly be neglected in year 2020. And of course, some recurrent expenditure beyond federal government as it affects state may also be abandoned. The risk here is that those who work under government are at the risk of not earning salary, and if they must, they may not be as at when due.
The government has included in the budget a $2.7 billion support package for the economy amidst the coronavirus outbreak. The reviewed budget outlines government plans to borrow about $11.5 billion instead of an initial $4.1 billion. The increased borrowing is to finance its expenses as the economy takes a double hit from the coronavirus pandemic and oil price crisis. According to the Debt Management Office, Nigeria currently owes about $85.4 billion. Experts warn the government should be cautious about its debt levels.
The debt to GDP ratio, even though it may get close to 30%, which is still partially comfortable. But when you look at revenue generation to debt service, it definitely will worry anybody and make everybody to be concerned about Nigeria's ability to pay. But more importantly, when you look at rate of debt versus economic growth, you will wonder if the debt we have collected previously and the debt we want to collect now will have implication on our economy. Is this the best way to go? I am worried that this is not the best way to go.
The new budget proposal has been sent to the National Assembly for lawmakers from both the upper and lower chambers to ratify. It is not clear when the lawmakers will resume their plenary as they are currently on a recess due to the coronavirus stay-at-home order. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
And Nigeria's commercial capital of Lagos is now in the second week of a total lockdown. In order to help residents over there cope with the effects of this lockdown amidst this pandemic, authorities have opened markets that operate twice a week across the city, essentially allowing residents to get some much-needed food supplies. CGTN's Deji Badmus has been to one of these markets. He filed this report.
So I'm right at the entrance of one of the COVID-19 special markets set up by the Lagos state government. Now, this is a market with a difference. It's actually a primary school that has been converted into a market and actually operates twice in a week. So let's see how the process works here, because it's not a market that you just come into and then walk straight in. Now, this is how it works. Wash my hands. Remember, I had to do this for like 20 seconds. So I'm now going into the market actually. So that's just the way it works. You don't just come in. The market is a completely different picture from the usual everyday market in the city. The makeshift stalls are very well organized and laid out to allow for social distancing. Every trader here has been provided with a small canopy to display their wares. The rowdy situation you find in most markets in the city is absent here. But obviously, not everyone in the market observes the recommended 2 meters social distancing. And one more problem. Not every resident who comes here gets what they need.
We are here to get some perishables, and what we are seeing are just non-perishables at all. And what we are made to believe that when we come to the market, we get perishables, we get food stuff like yam, tomatoes. But now, there's nothing like that here.
But beyond that, the atmosphere at the market is very relaxed and calm. Authorities are hoping with special markets like this, they would be able to put a check on the spread of COVID-19 in a city which is the epicenter of the outbreak in Nigeria and has the highest number of confirmed cases. The markets are located in several neighborhoods across the city and are positioned to be within walking distance of residents.
The concept is okay. It's okay, very, very okay. I think they know what we want. What people need most are perishables. So I think what they should bring to the market is perishables, vegetables, tomatoes, pepper, onions. I think that maybe fish, all those things, and meat. So people will come to the market.
The concept of the market is very nice. I mean, the stalls are well spaced out, but then there are quite a number of stalls that are empty because the traders are yet to bring in their goods. They're still being inspected, and that is the reason why some of the shoppers here have not been able to get what they actually want, talking about those perishable goods. But then, no question at all that the concept of this market is well suited for the current situation now that Nigeria finds itself battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Crossing over to Cote d'Ivoire, where several small and medium-sized enterprises are experiencing similar strain following the impact of this pandemic. Many businesses have been forced to respond to this financial pressure by reducing or in some cases laying off their staff. CGTN's Beryl Oro takes up that story.
Some small and medium-sized enterprises in Côte d'Ivoire are struggling under the weight of government measures to try and limit the spread of COVID-19.
Here at Guangxi Management, we help Ivorian businessmen to purchase their goods from China, and we help Chinese investors to set up shop in Côte d'Ivoire. But today, with COVID-19, we're seeing a decrease of 40% in our turnover, and this has a negative impact on our operating costs. We have made a provision of 6 months' salary, and today all our staff has received 2 months' salary and work from home. However, if this pandemic persists, we'll have no other choice but to go into unemployment or even reduce the workforce.
The impact has been felt hard in the industrial sector.
I have a staff of 30 employees with 10 other people we work with indirectly, making a total of 40 people. The current situation with COVID-19 is becoming more and more difficult, and we are considering whether to retain the staff or to put them on unemployment.
While rich countries are releasing significant funds to support their businesses, concern is growing about survival of businesses in less wealthy countries, especially those in sub-Saharan Africa.
Since last week, we've been working from home. For me, this is an opportunity to rest and enjoy with my family. But I pray that all this will come to an end soon, because if it continues, we might find ourselves on unemployment or even lose our jobs.
Currently, my company has reduced its staff. Some companies have even closed. I just spoke with my employer, and I've been forced to go on temporary unemployment.
According to Oxfam, the economic impact of COVID-19 in this part of Africa could cause a 30-year setback in the fight against poverty, and almost half of the workforce could disappear. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Now, before this pandemic ripped up decades of habit and tradition, working from home was considered a rather rare privilege. Now, though, it's a necessity for a big percentage of the labour force, regardless of the country you're looking at. Here's CGTN's Julie Shai examining how employees in Africa's most industrialised economy are coping with this sudden change.
South Africa's economic engine continues to turn, albeit slowly. Non-essential workers have taken their jobs home, while the state focuses on slowing the spread of the virus. Young millennial Billy Muka is a project manager at Kalu Media. It's been an easy adjustment for her.
I do feel a little bit more productive because I can manage my day in a sense that I can allocate time to specific tasks. I still work from an 8:30 to 4:30 basis, so I'm still keeping in my routine, but I'm not so stressed about, getting to work on time. For me, getting to work means at least I've gotten ready in the morning, my laptop is open, my phone is on, and I can start my mornings.
Muka is among the fortunate with a laptop, a smartphone, and a stable internet connection to work from home. But not everyone can log on remotely.
We had to be conscious of the fact that there were some of our employees where they were, which is more in the township on the outskirts of your normal suburbs. The connectivity wasn't too good. Employers have to find a way of letting them either take leave or find a way of how do we still make sure that we continue to pay you without doing much.
Mines and factories make up for a large part of South Africa's workforce and have been forced to comply with the mandatory closure. But this could change the future for office-based workers.
If you look at your mining, if you look at your energy, at some of your manufacturing, these are the things that can be done on site. These ones, they can be done remotely. So we don't have to now have employees all the time being with us working. How can we learn to adapt in this new way based on the learnings?
I've been able to focus on my primary job, which is at Kalu Media, but try and work on my other ventures that I'd like to start up with, being an influencer, fitness and training and all that kind of stuff. All of those doors have opened up for me as we are being quarantined or being self-isolated at this time.
A work-from-home culture has been in place in South Africa even before the lockdown. It is easier and more convenient. The only problem is trying to log off. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. All producing countries, essentially OPEC Plus, have a tentative agreement on the table to cut oil production. But there is a little spoiler coming up. We'll explore what that is at 1800 GMT, live from Washington, D.C. See you then. For now, back to Penina.
Thank you, Rama. You're watching Africa Live, still ahead. How one couple creatively went about organizing their wedding ceremony despite COVID-19 restrictions.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
TikTok, the Chinese social media video app, has become very popular among youths in Tunisia. Many families are using the technology for fun as well as to raise awareness during the coronavirus pandemic.
Thuraya has respected the general lockdown measures imposed by the state. She's spending this long period at home with her children. Acting, singing and recording videos for TikTok has become a daily routine. It starts with an idea, then it is developed and put into action by the whole family.
It's hard to convince children and youngsters to stay at home for weeks, but it is necessary. TikTok has made adaptation and life easier. We're creating digital content and sharing it with the world through this fantastic application. TikTok has brought us together with friends, followers and fans.
Qusay is a rising star in Tunisia. The 10-year-old TikTok user is also a talented actor who urges people to stay safe while indoors.
We study and play video games, but TikTok is the most amazing daily activity. We must all stay at home and respect the rules until the end of the pandemic.
Celebrating Fatima's 9th birthday is a joyful event. The whole family is mobilized to produce a video on this special occasion. The child is often described by her fans as the princess who virtually escapes the lockdown through TikTok.
We are at war against the coronavirus. TikTok made me happy on my birthday because I was able to share happy moments with followers.
TikTok is one of the most popular apps among youths in Tunisia. It offers a variety of options and choices, from short lip sync, comedy and talent videos, especially during the general lockdown. With millions of Tunisians staying home, social media usage has gone through the roof in the North African country. The Chinese short-form video sharing app has attracted more users of all ages who are downloading TikTok for fun and information on the coronavirus. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A couple in South Africa has held their wedding ceremony in the comfort of their backyard. This is after the groom recently recovered from the coronavirus and measures were put in place by government to curb gatherings. Film director Dan Mace made a video of the event that has been viewed more than 250,000 times online.
Sure, today was something else, eh?
Today was the best day of my life.
The couple had initially scheduled the wedding for the 21st of March, but due to measures to curb the spread of the virus, the event had to be postponed.
How did you feel about cancelling our wedding?
Postponing.
Postponing.
It was a really difficult decision having to postpone it. I feel like I'm stuck with those nerves of anticipation now, especially because everything was ready to go.
So the groom-to-be decided to prepare a surprise for his partner. This he hoped will ease the devastation of losing their much-anticipated wedding date. The first step was to create a wedding list. With many of the essentials missing, some things had to be ruled out. He created the rings out of guitar strings, built a makeshift altar, and finally created the guests and various people needed to host the ceremony.
This is Joey's jersey, and on the back is a little pouch, and inside I'll place the rings, and he'll come running down the aisle and deliver us the ring.
It's now time to surprise the bride. Mercy, who has since recovered from the virus, said everything that has happened has brought the couple closer. The couple now plans to make the wedding official in December. Chomgono, CGTN.
And coming up in sports, the African round of the World Rally Championship postponed over coronavirus pandemic.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
We begin with motorsports. Officials from Kenya and the International Automobile Federation, FIA, have agreed to postpone July's round of the World Rally Championship due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Safari Rally, scheduled for mid-July, will now be held at a later date. Kenyan Sports Minister Amina Mohamed on Thursday said she held a teleconference with all parties, including the FIA President Jean Todt, over the decision. The competition was making a comeback on the World Rally Championship calendar after an 18-year hiatus. The Kenyan government and FIA are expected to agree on new dates for the Kenyan round of the World Rally Championship. Meanwhile, the new Formula One season is still on hold as organizers consider closed races with no fans on the stands. However,